you're joining us and where you're joining us from in the chat. I'm Emily Patrick. I'm the Senior Manager of Intergenerational Programs at Generations United. I'm joining today from the Washington, D.C. area. Welcome to our workshop, Built to Last, Taking Intergenerational Work from Program to Practice. I want to share just a couple of housekeeping items before I hand it over to today's speaker. The first is that we are recording this meeting, as you may have just heard. We will share the recording of this with everyone who is registered, and we will also share any links that are referred to during the presentation in the chat. Most of you probably know Generations United, but for those of you who don't, Generations United is a national nonprofit organization that strengthens practices and policies across generations. We are the hub for all things intergenerational, the home for practitioners and partners sparking connection and innovation between younger and older people. Our website, gu.org, hosts a database of over 700 intergenerational programs and in-depth resources and information on how to develop and cultivate intergenerational relationships. We also recognize excellence in intergenerational programming through our annual certification process. To learn more, check out the link that's in chat. And if you're just joining us, I see we've got several others that have joined since I started. Please go ahead and introduce yourself in chat with your name, affiliation, and location. We have had a busy month of learning opportunities and are also hosting one more webinar this month. On November 20th, we'll host our Intergenerational Housing Learning Network. The topic for this month is Designing for Connection in Intergenerational Housing with Brian Carlton, principal and co-founder of Carlton Hart Architecture and the architect of Bridge Meadows, a fabulous program in Portland, Oregon. And you can scan the QR code there on your screen or go to the events page on our website to register. And like all of our events, we will record them and send recordings to anyone who's registered, but we do hope that you can join us. And last but not least, just wanted to share a few ways that we hope you will stay connected with Generations United. We regularly share our news as well as information on intergenerational programs from across the US and around the world. Sign up for our weekly newsletter, connect via our social media accounts if you haven't already. And with that, I'm now going to turn it over to today's speaker, a wonderful friend of Generations United and a champion for intergenerational work. Terry Kaelber is the director of the Institute for Empowered Aging at United Neighborhood Houses of New York. Terry is going to lead us through their organization's learnings on how to make intergenerational programming a core practice across your organization. Take it away, Terry.
Thank you, Emily. Hi, everyone. I'm Terry Kaelber, director, as Emily noted, director of the Institute for Empowered Aging at United Neighborhood Houses. We are a membership organization for neighborhood centers and settlement houses throughout New York State. And for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with the term settlement house, it is a community center that provides programs and services for all ages in a specific defined community and provides space for the community to gather. Settlement houses as a movement has been around for 150 years, so for a long time. Next slide. So building an intergenerational practice, why build a practice for intergenerational programming? Well, first of all, intergenerational programming is incredibly impactful, providing multiple levels of impact on older adults and younger people. We've seen it's had a huge impact on the staff in our organizations, upon the organization itself, and even the broader community. We also wanted to develop a practice because there are best practices, as Generations United always lifts up, best practices that can provide this kind of impact and a clear set of values that underpin the most effective programming. And training staff in these practices and approaches within an organization or center heightens this impact and helps sustain the practice over time. So UNH built its practice change curriculum, which we call Generations Connect, over a 4-year period in partnership with staff from 3 settlement houses working in 3 very different contexts. A large community center in the Bronx serving all ages, the picture in the upper left of the building. A community center in Queens, where the dominant program of the center was a senior center. And then a public school in Queens seeking to turn an after-school program into a community center open during non-school hours. So very different contexts. During this period, we sought answers to the three questions noted on the slide here. Like, what are the key elements that define the most impactful intergenerational programming? And particularly make it something that old and young want to keep coming back for. Then what's needed to make intergenerational programming a core practice that a staff across the center and organization can learn and want to utilize, and how to embed that and sustain it over time in the organization. Next slide. So we created this curriculum, which we've been piloting over the past year. It is a curriculum that is delivered over a 12 to 14 month period. It's seen as an organizational change and staff development program. We work with groups of organizations at one time, usually between 3 and 6. And we require a half a dozen staff from each organization to be present, representing at least 2 different departments, including executive and line staff. And they're all engaged in the training process over the year. We take a peer learning approach, which utilizes and seeks to build upon the knowledge and experience in the staff and really lift that up. And we also design it to be iterative. We have periods where we come together and learn in learning sessions, and that's followed by doing. And we provide coaching during these doing periods. So you can imagine it's pretty intensive. And we also developed a whole series of tools to support this process. Next slide. And so the tools, I'm going to put in the chat a link to this on our website to all these tools and resources. They're free and available online on a UNH website. And today we're going to be, I'm going to be taking you through just a few of these resources that support a practice approach to intergenerational work. Slide 5, please. Next slide. So basically, we're going today look at what we see are the core values of intergenerational practice within neighborhood centers. We're also going to be looking at the key steps to making intergenerational programming a core practice, and also some strategies for sustaining and embedding the practice over time. Next slide. If we could have the next slide, please. Okay. I think what I'll do, the next slide, I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to go into breakout groups. But the next slide would ask this question of what brings you joy in your life, and what do you think causes your joy? And you'll have about 4 minutes and just pairs to explore this. A little bit like speed dating, we're going to have throughout our time together kind of times where you'll break into pairs and to do this kind of reflection, and then we'll come back and hear what came up. I'll put the questions into the chat, and then
We definitely needed more time, Terry.
Absolutely. Yeah,
hi
even a
everyone.
minute more would have been good.
Yeah, I must admit, it's good to see everybody, and if the others feel like it, they can come off share their camera. This is a little bit like speed dating, given the amount of time we have. And we'll have 2 more sessions like this, where we just kind of get to talk about a few things. I'm just curious what came up for folks. Like, is anyone willing, 1 or 2 people willing to share kind of, this is what brings joy into my life, and this is why I think it's joyful. And now connect it to our practice.
Well, nature came up in our group, as did connection friends.
Excellent. Anyone else?
We pretty much had the exact same answers to that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a big nature freak. It definitely brings me joy, as do people.
And Linda, am I
And
getting it right that that was also sort of meditation time in a way?
Yes, it was. That's right.
well,
Processing and
cool.
yeah, for sure.
That's really cool. Well, why don't we, I'm gonna segue to explain why we asked this question and what it has to do with our Generations Connect. Emily, could you put up the slides again?
Will do. And actually, it looks like Adina may have hopped back on. So we may do a little flip flop in the middle of it, but but I'll get it back up for
Okay,
you.
sounds good.
Just a
Thank you.
sec.
So the idea of the reason we did this, asked you to think about this, is because we're in slide 7 at this point. Because one back, I think, yes. Because the core values that inform best practice are very connected to things that bring joy in our life. You mentioned relationships, and relationships, hopefully, if they're good relationships, bring joy. And what's the best practice that that's connected to is, in terms of intergenerational work, is building programming that creates meaningful connections between people. The other thing, another example are passions and interests. So people mention nature. For many people, that is a huge passion. And the best practice that connects to is building program that is built on the strengths, interests, and assets of your participants. That helps build relationship. Another piece that is often brings happiness for people is when we have kind of control over our lives and what we can do, that often brings meaning, and meaning is connected to joy. And the best practice there is, for intergenerational programming, is programming that develop participant ownership. We'll explore that a little later. And then finally, things that are where we are, those moments in life where we're seen and valued for what we contribute, that also can bring joy. And that best practice is something called enabling bidirectional interactions. And connecting work to what people love and get joy from is a key building point, a key building block to robust, sustainable intergenerational programming. Next slide. So an example of a tool that we developed to kind of reinforce that is a tool that we call Is It Intergenerational? And there are four different pads that ask these questions related to values, and then a summary pad. And an example of one of the pads is this question of, is it bidirectional? And we ask on the pad, we first describe what bidirectional means. Older and younger participants are both contributing to and benefiting from a relationship with each other. The connection goes both ways. And then we have a set of questions. Are younger participants meaningfully contributing to the activity? Are older participants also meaningfully contributing? Are younger participants benefiting from taking part in the activity? And likewise, are older people? And then we ask this question, if you answered no to any of these, how can you make your activity bidirectional? And so these are great tools for both staff and participants when you're planning a program, and also if you want to reflect on something that you've done and make sure that it is touching on the 4 values that drive really good intergenerational programming. So an example of one of our tools. Slide 9 would be great. Next slide. So here are 2 scenarios, and I'm going to quickly read them, and then we'll have just a quick discussion. Staff design and facilitate a program about healthy food. The staff stands in front of a graphic of the food pyramid and explains what it means. And afterwards, the staff person demonstrates how to make a healthy shake, discussing the various ingredients and why they're healthy. And then the staff person makes the shake and gives everyone a taste, and then ask participants if they have any questions or thoughts. One way of doing programming. Scenario 2, a group of older people with the input of youth program staff design and facilitate an after-school program for youth about healthy food and healthy eating. They want it to be very experiential. Working in pairs, a younger person and an older person are given a variety of different foods to make a healthy shake. They discuss which ingredients are healthy and which aren't, and then agree upon the ingredients for a shake that they make together. Each team shares the results with everyone else and discusses what they learned. So both teams end up discussing, both scenarios end up with discussion, question and answers at the end. Just out of curiosity, which of these approaches do you think would be more impactful and why?
I would say scenario number two, just because you always want to invite people for their feedback. And I love how it says, with the input of the youth program staff. So I think that's always important, is to invite people for their thoughts, and then they buy into it, and then it's more encouraging for them to follow through with the exercise.
Cool. Anyone else? Is there anyone who thinks scenario one is more impactful? When we've done this training, there have been people who think scenario one is more impactful, particularly if you have a contract that you're doing that you have to make sure you reach a deliverable. And there's often concern that with participant-led programming, it's hard. You can't be sure. Are you going to meet your contract deliverables, because the participants may be interested in doing something else. Let's go to the next slide. So I wanted to just share with you how we define participant-led programs. And there are program approaches where participants come up with the idea and plan and implement the program. The goal is to make your participants your guide, and it's really a best practice. But it's important to note that this work is always in partnership with staff. And this idea that a group of participants will go rogue and do something that isn't useful, that really can be avoided if you create strong partnerships with staff. And this is key to building robust and sustainable intergenerational programming, because it builds ownership. And we've seen over and over again, the more you have younger and older people who love the programming you do, they bring in more people, they want more. It really helps build robust programming. Next slide. So we have a tool that helps. It's kind of a planning tool in our toolbox that asks a variety of questions and takes you through steps to help you think about what are the ingredients that you might want to include as you build a participant-led approach to intergenerational programming. And these are just some of the questions for reflection. Do staff ask participants one-on-one if they would be interested in helping figure out how to bring older and younger people together, and then include them in the planning? So this is just an invitation to help you think, yes or no. Did the intergenerational program arise from an idea contributed by a participant? Did staff take on a coaching, advising, and supporting role with a participant to help them develop the plan and implement the program? And that staff role may be different from what the role of staff are when you direct and design the program yourself. Did an older or younger participant play an active role facilitating the intergenerational program? Yes or no? So this tool is meant to prompt reflection, and then it takes you through a variety of steps to help you look at where you are in participant-led programming and how you can strengthen it. The next slide. So we're also going to go into pair share and just share among yourself kind of what you're thinking about participant-led approach in your work, where the challenges are. Have you had some experience? And I will put this question in the chat once again. If we could go into breakout groups, that would be great.
Well, doggone it, we were right in the middle of a good, juicy piece of advice.
I agree.
Thank you all for coming back. So anything come up for folks?
We were talking about Dee is working with a group from both the older adult perspective and the child daycare. And we were trying to come up with ways of how to capacity build. Is that fair, Dee? For figuring out what the capacity really was for residents and what the capability would be in addition to what's the best fit for them. And Jeanette was just ready to deliver I think we should. And we came to an end of our time.
Oh no. Yeah, I'm sorry about this. This is we're giving you kind of little soup songs of different parts of our training and tools that takes place over a 14-month period. So it's really hard to put it into uh 1 hour, which I'm not trying to do. I'm really trying to just give you a sense of the main issues. Um, but yeah, and that's a really important issue. This question of trying to find out what the capacity is, really important. Anybody else?
Oddly enough, since I'm not really a service provider, I'm a coordinator. I shared a couple examples. I don't know if I want to explain them right now, but human libraries. I was at an event where there was a booth that said Ask a Millennial. But these are, I mean, they're one-offs. They're not sustainable programs. I'm working with a college class and they're helping me write some briefs about various topics related to aging. But again, they're not programs.
Hmm. Well, they could become for
They
sure.
could.
For
Absolutely.
sure. Those are really, but and in fact, a lot of these principles, it probably sounds as if you may use a number of these principles uh in the work that you're doing, it sounds like. Which is great, which is really, really great.
Yep.
Um,
Goal.
so why don't we go to the slide 13? We've done a fair amount so far. We've kind of two key things. One are the key values that drive really impactful intergenerational program. We also touched upon the importance of participant-led approaches as a way to build real commitment to and enthusiasm for intergenerational work and that also helps drive and sustain program over time if your participants really love it and then get involved with it. I also want to take a second, and we often don't think about this when we do kind of our programming necessarily. And this idea of one of the things that we learned working with our sites is how important it is to have a big picture goal for why you are doing intergenerational work, why you are bringing this practice into your organization. When that is clear, it really helps you explain why you are doing intergenerational work, helps with outreach, getting others interested. It helps with your fundraising, and informs your program design. And so here are just a few examples from some of the organizations we've worked with. One is doing intergenerational work to open lines of communication between old and young to create a deep sense of neighborhood belonging and connection. That's important to them, the organization. Another organization, intergenerational work they want to provide a place where old and young can work together to be catalysts for community change. They're really, they work a lot on community and civic engagement issues. A third sees bringing having generations exchange their experience, interests, dreams, and talents to build real support and value between them as really the goal of their programming. Seeing older and younger people as being real sources of support and value to each other, and all the ways in which that ripples out and can impact lives in their community and in their community center. So I want to give you a few minutes to noodle, and this is our last breakout, our short breakout room, to noodle what might be your kind of your big picture goal for your intergenerational program. And if you don't have a program that you're uh, running, just think of one that you would, if you did have a program, this is what you'd want the program to focus on. And you hopefully it's something that is, yeah, we'll come back. I'd love to hear some of your ideas. If we could go into the breakout room, that would be great. Is everyone back?
Yes.
Great. Is it possible to put us into, let's see here. Cool. So what came up for people? Was this an interesting discussion for you? Did you come up with some interesting ideas that might inform your work?
Yeah, that was a great question. And I'm sorry, Julia, we didn't give you time. Dee and I were rambling a little too much. But I think Dee and I really agreed on that. We have, well, I have to speak for myself, the more the infrastructure gaps, we don't have really a framework. We have the intergenerational program. We have several partnerships with various from kindergarten schools all the way to high school. The programs are within senior centers, affordable housings, retirement communities, but there's no real framework. We're just out there doing, the great work. And then what Dee said is also just more engagement. She's kind of like the sole person kind of carrying the weight of the program. Getting more engagement from other colleagues would be helpful.
Yeah, it's a really, and I appreciate your saying that, because it can be a really eye-opening process to engage your colleagues in this discussion. So what is the real reason we're doing this? And it can also, in asking that question, bring new energy to your programming, that people find a new way to connect to it. And also open up funding opportunities, as we mentioned before, because you can think of, oh, this is where we're going, and let's see if funders who might be interested in this. Julia, I see you said the sum total for me is to interrupt ageism, intra and interpersonal as well as social. Excellent. Yep. Intergenerational programming definitely does that. Well, thank you. So can we go back to the slides? I think we're on 15. So we've been taking you through, and this is another tool we developed. So we have a tool for the values that we shared early on, and I gave you just one example of that. We also have this tool called Intergenerational Best Practices, 7 Guideposts to Impact. And we've just gone through 3 of them. Center core values is foundational. So that's the value, using that values tool. Make participants your guide. We talked about why that's important, and know why you're doing this work. There's an interesting tool in our, for those of you who are really taken by that question, there's also a tool within our, on our online resources, that is a kind of survey or a whole bunch of questions that you can use and ask folks to in your organization to reflect on. And they're on they touch on different aspects of intergenerational work and the culture of the organization to really support best value, best practice work in that area. And that becomes important when you really do want to see this as something that the organization as a whole sees as a core way in which they do their work. Doesn't have to be the only way, but core to their efforts. Additional pieces of the 7 guideposts of this idea of plan, plan, plan. You often will hear people talk about how important it is to be intentional with intergenerational work. Many workplaces may be multi-generational, but it doesn't necessarily mean people are coming together in ways that intentionally build intergenerational relationships. create internal and external partnerships. In a way, you can view bringing together people across generational as a form of partnership across age, but you need the same sort of partnerships within your organization, between different departments, to make intergenerational work really core. And you often will be doing this work in partnership with organizations in your community. We also think that one of the best practices is to address community issues. Relationships often develop through doing stuff, and agreeing upon a community issue to think about how you're going to address it and to do something together to address it can really build very strong relationships among a group of younger and older people that becomes very powerful for them. And then finally, grow roots. This is kind of all the work that has to be done to look at what the organization does institutionally to center this work. And if we can look at the next slide, I'll show you a tool that we've got that has to do with that. It's called How to Grow Roots, not surprisingly. And it really is meant to be a reflection tool to think about what are the different buckets from working with these 3 settlement houses over many years to embed intergenerational work as a core practice. What within those buckets are things to think about. So just an example, one bucket is to help staff see it as part of their jobs, not as an extra thing, but as kind of a way in which they do their work. And there are things you can do is address intergenerational work in all onboarding of new staff, or include intergenerational work in job descriptions, or conduct staff trainings on intergenerational work, that sort of thing. Another thing is keep it funded. Everything's about funding. Well, things you can do there is connect intergenerational approaches to grants and government contracts you already get. In New York, what that's meant is we have contracts that our member organizations get, and we have found ways to have those contracts pay for staff time spent doing intergenerational work, and for the work that's done to be counted towards their contract. But those are just 2 examples. The other areas are things like how to publicize it. What are the visual cues you give in your space to kind of reinforce that this is intergenerational, things like that. Next slide. Just quickly, this is my last slide, and then we're going to open it up for just kind of questions. I wanted to just share this with you because to go back to how we started, why we did this work, intergenerational practice has so many impacts. It impacts older people. It positively impacts younger people. It has a huge impact on the organization if the organization embraces it, and on the community. It combats ageism, creates stronger community connections, etc. This also is in our tools and resources, so you can get that. And it's a good way if you're trying to bring other staff and get other staff interested. This is a great thing to share, to show all the ways in which this is built. And Generations United also has a great document called, I think it's called Making the Case. That's also in our resources. And that's also a great document to share with staff. If they have never done intergenerational work. We also have a video, because sometimes people, everybody learns differently, and we have a video all about the intergenerational work that we do. That the goal of it really is to make it real, as opposed to right now we're just talking about it. So that's the presentation. Next slide, and why don't we just open it up to questions any questions that folks have, comments, reflections. I know I've thrown a lot at you, which I apologize for, but hopefully it's whetted your appetites for how we're doing this work. And maybe we could come back to bringing us all together in a room. That'd be great.
Comment for you, or something that we've discovered. So we've been working on trying to get a demonstration project up would be more like a United Generations of Hope, or that type of modeling, but we're using university buildings.
Hmm.
And so a couple of years ago, we were working on a children's home grounds and looking at trying to get a demonstration project up. We had groups of STEM students do some research on what's the nexus for interaction. And I thought they'd take like the community service, like making a game, right? Because it seemed like that would be a lot more fun. They didn't. They took the research project, which I thought was interesting. Two groups did. And they basically came back with the same thing. It wasn't surprising, but it was good for supporting what we thought, was that food is the center nexus. So it has to have food. And then the recreational side. And then, but they had a different spin on the technology, in that technology be integrated, but technology was something we share both directions in terms of how you use it. And so
Hmm.
consistently with the two groups of students, that's what we came up with. So we've kind of made food as our main piece for, we call them an engagement center. So it's similar to
Hmm.
your settlement house. But that's helped us explain it to other people better, because everybody understands a cup of coffee and a donut. so
Right.
we've
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
we've had a little bit of good interaction that way. But I just wanted to share that because that's been really helpful for us to build out kind of our tenets or our framework to get people to understand, because it can be complicated. And when you add in housing and then you add in coordinated care and you add on a few more things, they're like, well, most of our people kind of run screaming. So trying to make it as simple as possible is what we found helps the most.
I really appreciate that you're sharing that. A number of um, our members reflect what you're sharing. We all have a relationship with food, and food, there are cultural dimensions to it, and there are emotional dimensions to it, and there's so many ways in which we connect to food, and it's a very rich topic to bring people together around. Just the act of eating and sharing a meal, and then sharing reflections on that. Um, there's a resource. This is another resource in our packets. There's an organization called Living Room Conversations. How many of you have heard of Living Room Conversations? So if you Google Living Room Conversations, their website will come up. But we use them we offer them as a tool because one of the files or folders in our toolbox is a folder about kind of, we call them pick and play, that you can take something that is an easy thing to do, and it gives directions exactly on how to do it, and it brings generations together in ways that lead to this kind of impact. And Living Room Conversations does that if you do it intergenerationally. And what it does is brings people together around a topic. They pick a topic, and they discuss it together based on certain rules of discussion. And interestingly, and they probably have 100 different topics, and food is a good one to talk about. And that's why it came up, is that sometimes it's a good way to bring people together, because sometimes you bring people together and then they're still trying to think of, well, what do I say and who do I say this to? So one way is to have a set of curated questions that people pick and say, let's talk about this one. And that builds relationship. But so anyone else have any thoughts, reflections?
Hi, Terry, if I may.
Yeah.
Sorry I couldn't participate earlier. I was driving into work, but I'm so glad I joined today, because the reason I joined, just to learn more about your resources, has been big for me. But I have a dream. I hope to kick off a project next year focused on developing a K through 14 lifespan curriculum. And the idea
Wow.
is to help youth prepare for a long life. So it's
Wow,
all
that's
of those
awesome.
things. So address ages and help them prepare, do intergenerational programming to bring generations together, to make aging across the lifespan normal, all of that. So what I'm excited about is I went to your website and there are all these resources that I believe if it's there, I can leverage it. So what I got out of this today is there are a lot of resources for me to leverage for that project.
That's great. Where are you doing this?
In California.
Is it a school? It's a school setting. What's
Yes.
prompted that? What prompted is it your
No,
idea, or it and
yes.
they?
I don't think I'm the only one that came up with it, but I came up with the idea actually like 25 years ago. I worked for Help Age International in Chiang Mai, Thailand. That's how I got into aging work. And I remember as I got in, that was my first entree. And I was like, wait a minute, why didn't we learn about this when I was younger. So it only, I actually got, and then after I started this role with the Commission on Aging, it really is a Stanford Center for Longevity. They came up with this
Hmm.
concept of a 100-year lifespan. And that really sparked that whole idea again. The fact that we've added 30 years to life, that children 5 today are going to have a really good chance of living to be 100, all of that. And I was like, this is something we need to do. So when I came into this role, I floated the idea 6 years ago, and I haven't got it off the ground yet, but I'm hoping next year is the year to
Well,
get it
if
started.
I would love to be, if you ever want to noodle anything, it sounds
Absolutely.
amazing. Um, we, I don't know how many of else have experienced this, but we've experienced that intergenerational work really does give a sense of a broader, of kind of this idea of a lifespan of what people can do and what happens. And and for younger people, it often seeds this idea that, oh, life is full of things that are going to happen, that that you can, things can be unexpected, but they also can, all those unexpected things can be really great. um and this idea of possibility, yeah, it's wonderful. Are you going to try to include older people in, people of different generations in kind of some of the programming you do, or?
So that also, you sparked me today with the intergenerational programming. I actually did a participatory study in Bangladesh where we
Hmm.
engaged older adults in doing these focus groups. And it really was engaged. It was a participatory development, engagement, all of that. And it really is powerful. So yeah, I had not gotten there in my thinking yet, but yes, I'm absolutely going to incorporate that in. We should, on our advisory board, we should have different generations represented in addition to, education professionals and, service providers for aging and disability, all of that. But yeah, I want a big tent. Definitely want a big
That's
tent.
really, really great. A number, one of the kind of linkage points in settlement houses and neighborhood centers that, for older and for intergenerational programming, has been after school programming. And a lot of after school programming might be, oh, you start a study, people are interested in photographs or in chess or, cooking or cosmetology or whatever it might be. And what they've discovered is they can put an invitation out to older people in the community or in a senior center or an adult living community. Do you have people who are interested in this? And there's always people who say yes, and they start to link them. And again, uh, it's through doing that relationships develop, and some amazing relationships develop. So I just suggest that also, that, just those connections can be, trying to figure out how to weave them into what you're doing can be very powerful.
It's a great
Barry, just
suggestion.
to mention to you, we have been running an intergenerational exchange program for the last 5 years, in which young people are the driving force. We
That's
engage
great.
them in their school as a separate club, not as part of their academic activity, to get together with a group of adults and seniors. Ours is not just a program for seniors. I think that all of the work that you guys do in focusing on seniors is in part a problem for me, and that
Hmm.
is that adults need this intergenerational exchange almost more than the than the seniors.
Yeah.
So I'm also very interested in the lady who spoke before. I didn't see who it was, but would very much like, I'm going to be putting my name and email into the chat, and hope that one of you would get back to us.
Mike, thank you so much for that. I completely agree with you. I actually think we do better as a society if we learn how to, age together across the lifespan. So I think that is the best way to go. Thank you
Well,
for bringing that up.
it's even more critical, and that is that we keep complaining, all of us, about the fact that we can't talk to kids and that the kids don't talk to the adults, and we don't do a thing about it. This is a positive way of putting them in control and allowing them that interaction that they need. And what we found, I also sense that a lot of the work that you're doing seems to be one on a group of people, and that it's a physical presence. We do lots of our work in Google Meet and in
That's great.
Microsoft Meet. Those kids feel a lot more comfortable looking at a screen than sitting in a group with seniors. They tend not to want to speak, in part because their peers might not be speaking. So much of this is alleviated by using laptops or tablets. It is something that I have wanted to interest Generation United in, also in terms of material that you have created that might be converted to an online use.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge it's after 2, so thank you all for coming. Emily, do you want to do a quick closeout?
Just want to say thank you again so much for being here, Terry. Thank you all so much for your engagement today in the session. A reminder, we'll be sending out an email within a couple of days with the recording from this call. We're also going to send out just a really brief survey. We would love your feedback. It helps us plan future sessions, so appreciate your participation there. But thank you again, Terry, for joining us. We look forward to connecting with everybody soon.
Bye, everyone. Have a
Take
wonderful
care, everybody.
holiday.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.